All right, welcome everyone. My name is Omar Martínez González, Senior Manager of Policy and Advocacy here at AIDS Foundation Chicago, and I'm joined by my colleague.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lira. I'm Manager of Policy and Advocacy here at AFC.
And we want to welcome you to this training called Advocacy 101 in anticipation of our Advocacy Day 2023 happening in April in Springfield. We're excited to have you join us, and let's get started. So the next slide, please. Awesome. To get us started and to kind of get the juices flowing, we want to pose a question to all of you. What does advocacy mean to you? How do you define advocacy? And you can either enter your thoughts in the chat, and we'll be pulling some of those comments, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, and you'll have a chance to kind of share what advocacy means to you. And just remember, there's no right or wrong answer. This is entirely what it means to you. And again, it'll help us to kind of get the conversation flowing. So we have one already. Advocacy means speaking out on things that are important to you and your community. Beautiful. Mary Pounder says, telling the truth of our story and what we need to thrive. Excellent. Latanya says, it means lending your voice and energy to making change for others beyond yourself. Beautiful. Advocacy means fighting for a cause. Excellent. Acting on topics that matter to my community and to me. Philip says, advocating means to speak out for others that may not have a chance to speak. Excellent. Jay says, giving voice to those who are unheard. Excellent. Andy says, standing up for others who may not value the things that you do. Solomon says, being equipped and brave to speak for yourself and others. Excellent. So the theme here is basically sharing your thoughts, experiences to drive change and on behalf of other people. Those are excellent perspectives. Next slide, please. And so for the purpose of this training and the way that we want to frame advocacy for Advocacy Day, we've created this general definition. So advocacy is the action of sharing your knowledge and experience with decision makers in order to influence a desired change. So I've highlighted two words, right? Action and influence. So advocacy does not happen in a vacuum. You may very well have ideas of what you want to see changed, programs that you want to see created or funded, but unless you take some type of action that goes beyond yourself, and in this case, engaging with decision makers, it's not considered advocacy. Advocacy, again, is an action, it's a verb, to influence decision makers. So advocacy is a way that we provide our perspective, our experiences, our knowledge to try to guide the way decision makers will allocate different resources that are limited, like time, attention, funding, etc., to make change that we want to see. Next slide, please. And so who are these decision makers, right? Decision makers come in a lot of different forms, from our bosses to community leaders, etc. But for the purpose of Advocacy Day, we're going to be focusing on people involved in government relations, elected officials, etc. Next slide, please. And so potential decision makers that you may interact with in terms of advocacy could be elected officials. So in the case of Illinois elected officials, you have state representatives and state senators. You may also have the governor as an elected official. Beyond elected officials, you have their staffers. And I think it's really important to point out the role that staffers play in advocacy and government relations. So while it may be very cool to kind of get to meet your elected official, they're the face of the campaign of the office. They're the ones that are going to the floor to vote. It's really the staffers who have a lot of that institutional knowledge and expertise about certain issues, particularly the issue that you're interested in, right? Elected officials a lot of times have to deal with a lot of different issues, so they may not be fully aware or versed on the issue that's important to you. And it'll really be staffers who have that expertise. And so getting to meet with staffers is really beneficial to your cause. And so hopefully, you know, if you are only able to meet with staffers, you'll be able to appreciate the role that they play in this process to help drive our priorities forward. Beyond elected officials and their staffers, you may have agency heads and appointed officials. So the governor's office gets to appoint, you know, heads to state agencies, etc. We're not going to be interacting potentially or primarily with them during Advocacy Day, but in future advocacy opportunities, you may be engaging with agency heads to drive policy changes rather than the creation of laws. And so those are also decision makers. Community leaders. So there are obviously individuals in our community who are advocating on certain issues that are important to us, particularly around HIV. And they get to basically decide what issues are brought up for discussion or are prioritized. And so those are definitely some of the decision makers that you may interact with in your advocacy. And then finally, yourself. You know, you play a big role in making decisions around who gets to be in office when you vote. By voting, you get to put current legislators on notice. If they're not supporting your priorities, it lets them know that maybe they need to change their perspective or maybe engage the community more. Or if, you know, a representative is not really representing your interests, you have the opportunity through your vote to make that change and select a new representative. Next slide, please. So who can be an advocate? Based on our definition earlier, an advocate is anybody who has a vested interest in seeing some type of change and who is willing to take the action of engaging with elected officials or other decision makers to really push for that change. But to be an advocate, to be an effective advocate, is a little bit different. So if you want to go to the next slide. To be an effective advocate, it's important to pick an issue that really matters to you, something that really resonates with who you are and your experience. What's great about this is you don't have to be an expert on everything. So take, for instance, you know, we'll be talking about issues that deal with housing issues, homelessness. We'll be talking about issues that impact people who are living with HIV, issues that impact people who are not living with HIV but are vulnerable to it, things like access to healthcare, etc. It's important to pick an issue that you can really connect with because it really reads through when you have those conversations with either staffers or elected officials. And it'll be more meaningful to them if you're really passionate about that issue and it reads through, rather than picking an issue that maybe you're not too familiar with and don't have a lot of passion for, but you're just, you know, saying because you read it on the script or an issues paper. Be authentic and honest. Again, that really reads through. It's important for them to know that this issue is important to you because that'll make them want to care about the issue. And honesty is a really key component here. So a lot of what we're doing when we're advocating is trying to build relationships, and a lot of that is based on honesty. If you feel like maybe you don't have an answer to a question, maybe they're asking you, you know, how is this going to impact the constituents in my district specifically? And maybe you can't think of an answer right on the spot. It's perfectly okay to say, you know, I don't know the answer to that. I will get back to you, rather than trying to make something up on the spot, because if it comes out to be inaccurate in the future, it'll diminish their willingness to kind of trust your perspective or to trust what you have to say. And so it's really important to be honest and upfront. It's important to craft a personal narrative that resonates with you and is relevant to your lead issue. There's a lot of different things that we may want to talk to elected officials about, but if you're there to talk about, say, HIV funding, it's important that your story and your narrative really focuses on that issue, because if it's convoluted and it includes other things that maybe are not so relevant, it'll create confusion and the elected official or staffer may not fully grasp what you're trying to ask for. And then finally, it's important to be persistent. So in advocacy, it's important to kind of, again, build those relationships. And if you show up once and share your ideas, yes, it'll definitely make an impact, but it's more meaningful to staffers and elected officials if they continue to see you showing up and continue to see you engaging, because to them, it means that you care about this issue. And so they should care about the issue. Next slide. Some do's and don'ts for advocacy. Definitely bring passion and conviction. Again, it's more likely that an elected official or a staffer will remember the feeling that they had during the conversation if they don't exactly remember everything that you discussed. So it's important to be passionate about what you're speaking about. Center ethical behavior. Again, be honest. Invest in building a relationship. Think about it like this. Are you more willing to help a friend or a random stranger who's asking you for a favor or to vote a certain type of way? Again, for advocacy, it's important to build those relationships. Highlight your role as a constituent. That's really important because elected officials rarely get a chance to connect with their constituents when they're at the state capitol. And so it's important for them to know that you're a constituent if you are a constituent, so they can understand that this is an issue that is impacting their district. Engage with your friends and family in advocacy. Advocacy is so much more fun if you're doing it with people that you know. And it also brings an opportunity for people in the community that are part of the district to come in and share their perspective with their officials. Sometimes this will be the only opportunity they get to advocate or to get to do this type of work in government. And make your cost relevant to the decision maker. So I know that this is kind of a turnoff for some people, but elected officials are constantly in campaign mode. It's important for them to know that the work that they're doing is impacting the community that elected them. So whenever you can make this relevant to their district, to the community that they're serving, it's always a win for you and for your cause. And always ask for specific action, right? You should never leave an interaction with a staffer or an elected official without asking for specific action. And we'll highlight this during the role play section at the end of this training. Things to not do. Try not to manipulate. It goes back to building a strong relationship with an official or their staff. It's a turnoff for them if you try to tell them, if you don't vote a certain way, I won't vote for you. It's just not the purpose of these types of meetings. Again, we're trying to build a relationship, so that kind of can really put cold water on it. Don't try to bribe. And then by this, even something like saying I voted or I contributed to your campaign last session can be misconstrued as bribery. Government officials are governed by very strict ethics rules that prevent them from discussing campaign contributions, etc., during official work. And so if that ever comes up or something like that, they may even stop the conversation entirely and not want to engage anymore. Don't rely too much on logic, and by this I mean relying too much on good and wrong or good and bad. What's good to you may not be good for someone else or another constituent. So framing your argument in this light will diminish their willingness to kind of engage in the conversation. Again, be honest, don't lie. If you don't know information that they're asking you, it's okay to say I'll follow up at a later time, rather than trying to come up with a number on the spot. And don't engage in aggression. Again, going back to the idea of building relationships, this is not the forum to try to put them on the spot and let them know that if they don't vote a certain way, you're not going to support them, or to let them know that you didn't vote for them during their election, but you're still there to drive a policy change. Try to focus on the issue that you're trying to get them to support instead. Next slide. There are different types of advocacy. There's direct outreach to decision makers like office calls, letter writing, or meetings. Advocacy Day is going to be one of these types of direct outreach events that we get to do. But there's other things that you can do, like submitting letters, office calls, etc. AFC also has a virtual engagement center that basically allows you to send communications to your elected officials that we draft on your behalf. So that's another way to engage in advocacy. There's engagement through committee hearings, and you'll hear more about this in the next part of this training. But basically, the State House will host committee hearings on bills that are of interest to us. And there's sometimes opportunities for you as a constituent to address the committee with remarks or even submit a testimony slip showing your support or opposition for laws. It's important because it shows them that you're paying attention, and it allows you to influence whether or not they vote for it. And so my colleague Aces will speak more on that process. Supporting or participating through advocacy groups. So engaging through AFC or organizations like us is another way to engage in advocacy if you don't have the time necessarily to call an office or write a letter. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, voting is such an important component of advocacy because every time you cast your vote, you are either supporting a legislator who is supporting your priorities or changing your representative to someone who is prioritizing your priorities. And so with that, we can go to the next slide. And I will pass it over to my colleague Aces.
Thanks, Omar. So again, emphasizing that our hope is that this will provide some helpful background information leading up to Advocacy Day this upcoming one. Know that in the future, we're hoping to create a larger set of resources to kind of provide information about what it looks like on the federal or local level, but for the sake of today's goals, we're going to focus on what it looks like on the state level. So broadly looking at the branches of government, we have three different pieces of state government. We have the executive office, which is the office of the governor, Governor Pritzker. You have the judicial branch of the government, which is the Illinois Supreme Court. And our closer focus for the purposes of Advocacy Day is looking closely at the Illinois General Assembly, which right now we're in the 103rd General Assembly. There's currently 59 state senators and 118 state representatives. So when we're looking at the background context about all things related to policy, advocacy, know that you're not expected to know everything. Our hope is that for today, you'll have some helpful sort of background information to help you with your advocacy effort, but always lean on us. If you ever have like specific questions, you're always welcome to send us an email, and more than likely we'll be able to like get you some answers. And so when we're looking at the legislative process, that's one of the closer looks at our advocacy efforts when it comes to Advocacy Day. We want to understand what it looks like for a bill to become law, and overall how the General Assembly functions. This helpful graphic is brought to you by Restore Justice Illinois. It's a nonprofit working to address unjust sentencing laws, and just wanted to borrow the really nice sort of condensed illustration about what it looks like to have a bill move through the process. Overall, when we're doing this advocacy work, the golden ratio is 30, 60, and 1. Any bill that becomes an act needs 30 Senate votes, it needs 60 House votes, and at the end of the day, 1 signature from the governor. So you start from bill ideation, it moves through either chamber, so goes to the House or goes to the Senate. And a helpful side note is that bills that start with HB, you'll sometimes see that. That means that the bill started in the House chamber, or a bill will start with SB, which means that the bill started in the Senate side. And then overall at the bottom, you'll kind of see that January through May. That's kind of the rough timeline about how bills are supposed to be moving. Little caveat, this graphic's from 2020. I'll note that this session ends on May 19th. So overall, there's things in place that allow us to kind of move the bill along. And then this is like a standard sort of flow to how bills are supposed to move through the process. But know that there's always exceptions. Illinois does not fail to surprise us in how things move at the end of the day. But again, this is just for a sort of brief overview at how the process looks like and how things move. But one closer look is that once a bill is introduced and read for the first time, it's assigned into a committee. Committee assignments are really important. It kind of goes on a sort of assignment process where it'll go to a committee that has a sort of subject matter related to the bill. They then open up the opportunity to have committee hearings, either a subject matter that has a more at-length sort of conversation around a bill or a state department, et cetera. And there's also the opportunity for committee votes to happen, which that would then signal to other legislators in the broader chamber the sort of nature of the bill. So you can take, for example, a bill only got some support from Democratic legislators. So on the floor, you'll see that, oh, this was a Democratic-led sort of initiative, or you could have full support from a committee, and then on the general floor, you'll less likely be able to see like debate happen because of it. So it'll be like a bill that moves through bipartisan support. And then another sort of plug that we try to include is that in committees, it provides an opportunity for the public to submit sort of witness slips or testimony. You'll sometimes notice that on behalf of AFC, we'll let folks that are involved in our notices that there's an opportunity to submit a witness slip in support of a bill. This also signals to legislators that the community is watching or there's specific investment on a bill. And it also helps spark negotiation at times if, say, large groups of folks or organizations are in opposition to a bill. That sort of opens opportunity to add amendments to a bill during the process. And I also want to emphasize there's no exam at the end of this. So definitely our Q&A chat is sort of open. So folks definitely feel free to like drop a question if you have them as we're going through this. One sort of helpful resource we definitely want to plug is navigating the Illinois General Assembly online. This is a very, very, very helpful state legislation related resource that you could use the day of for Advocacy Day. You can hop on your phone, www.ilga.gov, and on there are multiple sort of features that allow you to navigate the state capitol while you're here or even at home. So with that, I'll actually screen share and kind of go through an example of what it might look like to navigate the website. Let's see, I'm hoping that this comes up for you all.
We can see it.
Thank you. So as an example, one of the bills that we are working on right now is House Bill 1286. So on here, you'll kind of see the general sort of home screen for the General Assembly. And on here, there's a search option. You can put in HB 1286. So you'll see a sort of short description. This bill is on our legislative priorities for this session. Kind of provide some more background information on other things that are on our agenda. So you'll see the sort of House sponsors that are currently supporting the bill. You'll also see Senate sponsors if the bill moves through the chamber. And what's really helpful is that everything is, for the most part, hyperlinked. So you'll be able to like click on a legislator, kind of get a bio and a picture for folks that maybe need facial recognition. And then scrolling down, you'll get a rough synopsis of the bill and what's included in it. You'll see a sort of timeline of actions related to this bill. So you'll see date stamps and when things were first read, when folks hopped on as a co-sponsor. And in my personal opinion, the best part is being able to look at actual records of the votes. So on here, you're able to see what the committee hearing votes were like, what the voting record was like, and you're able to actually get it by name. So who voted for what, you can look up your own representative and see like if they were in support when it came to the vote at the end of the day. So then going back to this screen, the bill page, another helpful feature I mentioned earlier is that you can look at the general page for a state representative or a state legislator, so a senator is also included on this. You'll see their committee assignments, a quick bio about them, the associated senator for them, how to contact them, bills that they're supporting, committees that they sit on. It's a very helpful feature. Another thing you could look at is the full text of the bill. While the synopsis is really nice, at the end of the day, you want to make sure you know what's actually on the bill. So you'll see what this is like in the actual language for the bill. Everything that's new is underlined. And another helpful thing is looking at witness slips. So you're able to see the sort of proponents, opponents, folks that took no position. For folks that have previously helped us out, you'll probably see your name listed on here. And so those are some of the helpful sort of things that are available on here. Another helpful thing is you could actually look at when the House chamber is on. You'll see audio or video sort of streaming available. So you don't necessarily always have to be here to see or participate in that. You could always tune in remotely. And then on the homepage is also another helpful feature. For folks that maybe don't know who your state representative or state senator might be, you could also have the legislator lookup feature. You click on this, you input your address, and it comes up for you. So all in all, definitely want to stress that this is a helpful sort of resource that's available to the public. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A box. And then just a quick sort of plug on what the role that our governor plays. At the end of the day, again, they kind of give that final approval on a bill to be a law or a public act, or they also have the power to veto, so send a bill that was sent to their desk back to the General Assembly to consider amendments or continue that process. Another helpful sort of thing to keep in mind is that they also propose a state budget. So when it comes to HIV-related advocacy, you'll sort of see where things are with that, if there's been increases that have been recommended or cuts related to HIV, which unfortunately this year there was recommended cuts in that state budget. The office also comes with their own emphasized list of priorities. You'll also notice that Governor Pritzker has a huge thing for early childhood, something to keep in mind. But a helpful fun fact is that our Getting to Zero, our statewide initiative to get us to zero new transmissions of HIV, was actually endorsed by the governor back in May of 2019. So if you want more information on GTZ, feel free to check out our website. And also something else to kind of keep in mind is also the political climate as it relates to Illinois is something that influences a lot of the things that happen in the state capitol. So you're tuned into your note, tune into the radio or conversations happening amongst your community members. Local news is also something that's huge. It's something to also keep in mind, things like be kind of brought into conversation and the relationships you build with your legislator. So these will always be things that they want to be in tune to as well. This is more for reference. At the end of the day, we want to be able to provide this information to you all. Will be sent out in a follow-up email. But these are the AFC policy priorities. We encourage you all to, toggle around the ilga.gov website with these different sort of legislative priorities, things that we'll be hopefully advocating for this upcoming month as you join us for our Advocacy Day. And so all in all, we want to tie it back together. So I'll pass it over to you, Omar.
Appreciate that, Aces. Could you go back to that slide again? I think we have a few minutes to just kind of go over them and kind of just if you could give us just a quick sentence for each about what they focus on, that'd be really useful.
Yeah, of course. So more in-depth information, we have a slide deck that kind of goes into it in a webinar presentation that we did earlier. But for the most part, in order of sort of like priority, if you will, this first one is strengthening and protecting Illinois HIV funding infrastructure. That's related to all things funding for the HIV sort of sector of the state. In a similar fashion, the next two appropriations related or budget related conversations or initiatives. One's related to housing. So we're trying to advocate for all the things that are related to like the social determinants of health when it comes to addressing HIV. So we have one on housing. Healthy Illinois for All is expanding Medicaid-like coverage for all Illinoisans, regardless of immigration status. There's also on that fourth line item, there's the SB 1912, which is our health insurance rate review and affordability bill. And that's to help sort of provide another tool for us to negotiate what premiums look like when it comes to an insurance plan on the state level. There's also our healthcare provider cultural competency bill. And that's to provide mandated education for all healthcare providers in the state of Illinois. But we definitely understand that when it comes to HIV services and care, there needs to be a sort of cultural competency on the clients that healthcare providers see on the regular basis. House Bill 2 is our overdose prevention sites pilot bill. We know that as it relates to HIV, HIV transmissions do occur because of injection drug use, and this could be another access point or site for us to help intervene when it comes to HIV. But overall, the first priority when it comes to the overdose prevention site pilot bill, or HB2, is to help prevent and intervene in the opioid epidemic and the overdose deaths that are happening at an alarming rate across the state. And this last bill that we have on here is our gender inclusive multiple occupancy restrooms. It's a permissive opportunity to allow businesses to install these restrooms in their facilities if they would choose to do so. And that was actually the bill that I kind of ran through earlier when I was navigating the ilga.gov website. Very crash course. Again, this is just for introductory purposes. We'll have this presentation to you all at the end of the day so you can help reference this, along with the slide deck when we presented on the policy priorities not too long ago.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aces.
Yeah, of course.
You can go to the next slide. So now we're going to tie it all together. We have carved out some time for us to role play a little bit to kind of get in the spirit of what it'll be like to pitch our speech basically to our elected officials. And so Aces and I will do the first introduction just to kind of show you an example. And we encourage you all to kind of consider what bills you want to talk about, what issue is important to you, and to try to craft something. We'll give you a few minutes to do that while we do our example. And then we will call on folks to chime in. So if you'd like to participate and actually, you know, come off mute, we'll ask you to raise your hand and then we'll unmute you and you'll have an opportunity to do your pitch to Aces, who will be our legislator. So we can go to the next slide. Just to give you a bit of a roadmap on how to craft that pitch. This is an advocacy formula that you can follow. So you always obviously want to introduce yourself. You want to state your issue / share your narrative. So pick an issue again that really resonates with you, that's important to you, and share kind of how it fits into your experience, your life, etc. You always want to suggest a solution, and that can look in many different forms. One solution could be voting in the affirmative for a measure that's important to you, or voting against a measure that could harm your community. State your ask. Again, you always want a specific action that you want the legislator or staffer to take, and you always want to get an answer as often as you can. You want to get an answer on the spot, but you can always follow up. And that's the next part. You follow up, right? It's not enough to just make your ask. You'll always want to make sure that you connect with the office again to just make sure that they either follow through on what they said they were going to do, or if they have follow-up questions, you can address them then. Can you go to the next slide? I forget what's next.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so let's go back. We'll leave this up, and then Aces and I will do our little role play just to demonstrate what that could look like. So Aces is going to be my legislator. He's going to be my state senator, and I'm going to be talking about two issues that are really important to me. Okay. So hello, Aces. Or hello, Senator Lira. My mistake. My name is Omar Martínez González. I'm your constituent. And today I want to talk about two really important issues that I would like for you to consider. First, I would like for you to support the Healthy Illinois for All bill, which is HB 1570, as well as the Healthcare Provider Cultural Competency Bill, or HB 2280. And so I've been your constituent, or I've been living in the district since I was 14 years old. I was raised by immigrants. I am an immigrant myself. And growing up, I saw the need in our community, especially among the undocumented community, to access basic healthcare. Things that are preventable ended up ballooning to really serious issues, to the point where my community was only able to access care in the emergency room. A lot of those issues could have been prevented, and the money could have been saved to the state had they had initial access to healthcare. And so that's why the Healthy Illinois for All bill is really important. Additionally, as somebody who is Latino and LGBTQ, part of the queer community, I've had some really negative experiences in healthcare that I think that this Healthcare Provider Cultural Competency Bill will address. Our community, and especially people in our district, deserve to have healthcare that is culturally competent and accessible to them in their language that is affirming of who they are as people. And so we really need this bill to help train providers to better care for our community. And so again, I'm asking you to vote yes on Healthy Illinois for All, as well as the Healthcare Provider Cultural Competency Bill. And I look forward to connecting with you further and talking to your staff about this issue as needed. Do I have your support on these two bills?
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me, Omar. I'm a sponsor right now for the Healthy Illinois for All bill already. So I'm glad that you're bringing attention to this, and I'll be sure to continue those conversations with my colleagues. Um, it was a little bit of information there, but I would love it if you could email me sort of a gist or some fact sheets that you could send over, and I'll be sure to jump on as a sponsor for both of those bills actually.
Fantastic. I'll be
Yeah,
definitely following up with your staff to make sure that this stays on your radar. Thank you so much.
thank you.
And that's as simple as it can be. I mean, really, it's just about sharing a quick blurb about your experience, highlighting the bills, and you won't have to memorize them now for this practice. Again, I know we showed a whole bunch of bill numbers and names. They're very long names. So I understand that it can be a little complicated, but you'll have a chance to practice this prior to Advocacy Day. And so we encourage you to look at the fact sheets that we've created, the training that we have specific to those issues that we're promoting. And yeah, so again, we'll give you, I want to say, a minute to kind of look over. Maybe we can pull up the issues, or if you want to look at this formula, just craft a brief pitch, and then we'll open the floor for folks who want to chime in and practice their narrative. And we encourage you all to participate because, Advocacy Day will be a day where you'll actually be meeting with legislators and or their staff, people who you may not be familiar with. Right now, you're among family, you're among friends. And so it's an opportunity for you to kind of polish off your wheels and really try to, craft a narrative that you might pitch during Advocacy Day.
Yeah,
So we'll go ahead
and
go ahead.
I was just going to add a little bit to Omar's point. We know that the list is pretty long when it comes to the agenda that we're providing for you all. For the day of, we'll have a toolkit that kind of has them listed out. But for today's practice, like definitely if you want to just kind of lean on HIV funding as the issue or for the third point, like suggesting a solution, you could just say that for our practice session today. We just kind of want to get you in the formula of just introducing yourself, where you're coming from, what the issue is, how it's connected to you, and the sort of solution you're asking for is, can we count on you to help increase HIV funding? You can say. But if you have a bill in mind, definitely feel free to bring that up, and I can have a little conversation with them.
Awesome. Do we have any takers so far who would like to come off mute and practice with us? I promise ACEs will be very nice. And you know what? Go ahead.
Sorry, Omar, I'm not sure if you can see the hands. It looks like we have two right now, actually.
Okay.
So the first one we have is Zach Whammer. So I'm going to take you off mute, Zach.
Zach, you can unmute yourself now, I believe. There you go.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Great. Yeah, good afternoon, Senator Lira. I'm Zach Whammer. I'm one of your constituents. And today I want to come and talk to you about the number of people in the state of Illinois who are still getting infected with HIV, and also those that are still living with it. And as you know, that's, X number of people throughout the state. And each year, X number of people become infected. So what I would like to ask is for your support with the ongoing commitment to funding in Illinois, sustained funding for HIV, as well as increased funding for HIV in the form of HB XXY, whatever it is. And so with that, I would ask for your support in this bill. Is that something that you can help us out with, Senator?
Yeah, of course. Zach, thanks so much for coming to speak with me. I've actually had some advocates previously bring up this bill to my attention, but I wasn't sure if this was something that, I had constituents concerned over it. But I think now that you're bringing it up, I definitely want to be more informed, and definitely will be advocating to increase funding as it relates to HIV.
Great. Well, thank you, Senator. I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate your support, and I'll let you get on with your day.
Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Capitol and your Advocacy Day.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Zach. That was wonderful. All
Thank
right.
you.
Then, Diego, you said we had other folks on the queue.
Yeah, right now we have Philip Redmond. Here we go.
Hello, Senator. How are you today?
Hello, hi, nice to meet you.
I'm here to talk to you about keeping the funding for HIV and prevention.
Hmm.
I worked for 3 years with men at risk of HIV through Steamworks and TPAN. And one of the major concerns and questions I would often field was regarding PrEP and how to get it and how to pay for it. I know through PrEP Illinois that we do have state funding that helps people achieve that. And my concern is if we don't keep the funding as it is or increase it, that could get cut and then we could have an increase of people not being able to receive PrEP as they need it.
Hmm. And then I think,
Is-
as I understand it, PrEP is the preventative way of addressing
Yes.
HIV. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Do-
pre-exposure prophylactic.
Okay. All right. Did you say that you work at TPAN?
No, I no longer work there, but I did for 3 years with them, through them.
Okay, that's incredible work. Yeah, thank you so much for, coming all the way out here to come to speak with me. I've been somewhat familiar with the work that TPAN has done in the district, and definitely trying to support the work. I know that prevention is key when it comes to HIV. There's like long-term sort of benefits. Have you seen in your experience, like there was like any specific community concern when it came to accessing PrEP?
Mostly paying for it, and some of it was also like trying to find an appropriate doctor that would give it to them.
Hmm.
The sensitivity to how to get it, and the conversations that they would need to have with their doctors. So the two bills where we've got the sensitivity and the funding would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, I would love to support that. I'll take a fact sheet if you have one, and I'll be sure to jump on and vote and support one, and then I'll consider sponsoring if you want to follow up, and as I mull that over and look at the language of the bill, if you will.
Okay, well, I don't have a fact sheet with me right now, but I will make sure that I forward one to your staff as soon as I have one available.
Thank you so much. I'll be on the lookout for that.
Okay, thank you for your time, Senator.
All right, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Philip. And I believe we have one more person.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more.
Yes.
We have Jabran Babar.
Sounds good. Jabran, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, Senator Lira. My name is Jabran Babar. I'm one of your constituents and living in the city of Chicago. And I wanted to talk to you today about strengthening and protecting Illinois' HIV funding. I know that there has been some talk recently about actually reducing HIV funding in the state budget. And, I just think that at a time where, we're really making a lot of progress in educating folks on using PrEP, which, as you may know, is a highly effective prevention from HIV, and as well as the African American HIV/AIDS Response Fund. As great as PrEP is, a lot of the most at-risk communities, Black and brown folks and whatnot, there's a lot less just kind of exposure and use of PrEP. So, along those lines, there's also getting to zero. I just recently learned about U equals U, which is basically just means that if folks who get, I should say folks affected with HIV, if they get treatment to where their viral load is low enough and it's undetectable, then it's actually untransmissible too. So, between PrEP and having strong funding for advocacy around treatment. I really think that it's just kind of a no-brainer to have as many healthy and thriving Illinoisans as possible. So yeah, just wanted to ask if I can count on your support for the bill to strengthen and protect HIV funding in Illinois, and if there's any apprehensions that you might have to doing that, then I'd also like to know and see if we could help with your understanding.
Yeah, Jabron, thanks so much for bringing voice to this. I've actually had some advocates bring me the spiffy bill, they called it, to my attention. There is some constraints in leadership, so I'm the conflict of interest to jump on as a sponsor to the bill, but I'm definitely trying to advocate this, have this be a high priority when we're negotiating the budget. But now that you're bringing it up to me, and I spoke to someone earlier today about this, I'll definitely, I think I'm just gonna jump on it and sign up as a sponsor. Honestly, I feel like this is such a huge need in our district. And I really want to thank you for coming to Springfield to speak to me about it.
Okay, great. We love to hear that. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll go ahead and follow up with your staff too, just with some fact sheets for you to reference as you fight for this, really essential cause for the good of all, really all Illinoisans at the end of the day. And look forward to seeing you become a sponsor as well. I'll definitely be looking out for that. Thanks so much today.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jabron, and thank you so much to everybody who chimed in. You all were fantastic. And it really just highlights how laid back this can be. I mean, at the end of the day, representatives are people just like you and I. They may not always be fully aware of the issues that impact us, but I don't think any legislator goes into government without the desire to want to help the community that they serve. And so your voice is important, your story is important. One thing I'd love to highlight is the idea that you should not share anything that you're not comfortable with. Because anytime that you put yourself out there, even to a legislator or a staffer, there's always a possibility that they may not agree with you or react in a way that's hurtful potentially. Even our allies will say things sometimes that are hurtful. Sometimes they may use stigmatizing language around HIV, such as infection of HIV, etc. And so it's important to try not to take it personally. And again, always make sure that you're only sharing what you're comfortable with, so that you don't open up yourself for potentially a negative experience. For myself, when I shared my example, I am very openly a DACA recipient. I am very openly a queer individual. That's language that I'm comfortable using, and so I feel 100% comfortable putting that out there. But I understand that there may be legislators who may not agree with that viewpoint or understand where I'm coming from as an individual. And so there's always a possibility that, stigmatizing language can come up. And so just making sure that you are prepared for that. Going back to one of the suggestions we made, to not be confrontational. If it does happen where something is said that is hurtful or that makes you feel a certain type of way, again, try not to engage in aggression. It's okay to let them know that, it's hurtful language. If you want to educate them in that moment, you don't have to. We'll have a moment to debrief after Advocacy Day. You can always come up to staff afterwards and have a conversation with us about it. And we'll try to address it on your behalf as well. So just so you know that you are supported in case something like that happens. I think we have some time for Q&A. I see several questions, and so I'm going to go ahead and pull those up, and we're going to answer them in the order that we received them before we, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Can you go back to that, Asus?
Oh, yeah.
Before we go to Q&A, just want to highlight some important dates that are coming up. So this is the first training in a series of 3 trainings that we have around Advocacy Day 2023. The next one will be next week on April 5th, 2023, and it'll be empowering advocacy through storytelling. So part of the training today was learning a little bit about government, how it works, what advocacy can look like, and beginning to think about how to craft your narrative or your story. This next training will focus on best practices on how to share a story that's impactful. So I highly encourage you all to attend that if you haven't yet registered. I believe we're dropping the link in the chat. Following that, the following week, we'll have Advocacy Day 2023 nuts and bolts, where you'll get to learn specifics on Advocacy Day and what to expect from when we meet, where we're meeting, travel to and from the Capitol, etc. So it's a really important session. We highly encourage you to attend it if you have not yet signed up. We'll also drop the link in the chat. And then finally, obviously, what we're preparing for Advocacy Day in Springfield on April 19th. We will be meeting bright and early in downtown Chicago, and we're so excited to have you join us. So we encourage you all to continue to share this information with other people in your network. Have them join us as well if they haven't yet signed up. And now we can move on to Q&A. If you can go to the next slide. So we have a question from Gibran. The first question was, should we make any effort to advocate with the governor and his staff? That is an excellent question. For the purpose of Advocacy Day 2023, we'll be focusing on state legislators, so state representatives and state senators. There may be other opportunities to engage the governor's office in future actions that we take. And usually we'll put those through our Advocacy Action Center. So if you're not signed up for that yet, we encourage you to check it out and sign up. There will be opportunities to engage the governor's office potentially through that means. We have a question that says, what should I do when a legislator asks me a question and I don't know the answer? That's an excellent question. Always feel free to let them know that you don't know. We don't expect you to be experts on every issue. Legislators may ask you very specific questions to their district. That's usually their focus. If you don't have that information, you can let them know that you don't know the answer. And, either yourself or somebody from AFC will follow up with that information. I believe AFC will be following up with additional information for legislators. And if you flag it to us, we'll be definitely happy to answer that question on your behalf.
Yeah. And then I'll just add a little bit to this too, is that while, we could debate or provide specifics around the specificity on policy, one thing that you can't get wrong and something that they can't necessarily argue with is your story. That's why we wanted to emphasize having a storytelling workshop or training opportunity in the series. So definitely don't feel, again, like you have to be an expert in and out on the policy details of any bill. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that you're helping and allowing that room to connect to your personal story and experience. Because that's what we really want to emphasize come Advocacy Day.
Thank you, Aces. Our next question says, when talking to a legislator at Advocacy Day, do I have to talk about the priorities from AFC? I'll let Aces weigh in on this from his perspective, but I would say the short answer is yes. The priorities that we've crafted are really based on the results from a community survey that we conducted last year, geared towards people impacted by HIV. By answering the survey, they basically let us know what priorities they want us to focus on in advocacy. And so that's what has really informed what we're doing this year. And so because this is an AFC advocacy initiative, we are asking you all to kind of tie as much as you can back to the priorities that we are providing. And I believe you'll have a one-pager that shares those priorities. We did show them on the screen. If there are any other issues related to HIV that you're interested in bringing up, like PrEP, etc., you're welcome to have that conversation as well. Although, again, going back to the suggestion that you continue to engage and show up, that's an opportunity for you to do a follow-up if there are other bills that you want to bring up, especially if they're not related to HIV. It's an opportunity for you to reconnect with that office to bring up those specific issues. And if there are issues that we're not prioritizing this year because of limitations in availability, etc., you can always reach out to us and let us know if there's an issue that you want us to focus on, and we can see how we can incorporate that into our priorities. So short answer is yes. On Advocacy Day, please focus on priorities that AFC has spearheaded. Aces, I don't know if you want to add anything to this.
Yeah, so I'm just getting word actually from our Director of Government Relations, Timothy Jackson, that the straight answer is no, you don't necessarily have to. At the end of the day, you'll notice that AFC broadly does sort of support, we'll slip in witness slips in support of other bills and legislation. It might not be necessarily specifically on our agenda, but we know that when it comes to HIV, there's a broad sort of impact and sort of influence that other things, other sectors, other sort of issue areas could impact folks that are living with or vulnerable to HIV. So it's like, our hope is that at the end of Advocacy Day, legislators are learning what's important to folks that are, you know, living with or vulnerable to HIV, or advocates for HIV are, you know, looking out for and is a top priority for you. Our agenda, yes, is connected and it's informed from community input. And a lot of it is, you know, directly connected to all the sort of strategies that are related to getting to zero. You know, we have a template for you to go off of, and if you find that there's other things that really speak to you, you know, encourage to build that relationship with your legislator, hoping you have that opportunity to really get to speak with them.
Well, I stand corrected, and I appreciate that, Aces. Thank you so much for providing that
Yep.
insight, and Timothy as well.
Yeah, that's all time.
All right, the next question is, will we receive priority items we should advocate for? So yes, I believe we have a one-pager that talks about AFC's priorities, but as Aces just mentioned, if there are other issues that you're interested in bringing up, then you're welcome to also look into those. I don't believe we'll have information about other bills, but we will provide you with information about the bills that AFC is prioritizing. Okay, and then the next question is, are our representatives and legislators aware this will be Advocacy Day, and will they make themselves available to address any questions or concerns we may/do have? That's a great question. So AFC on the back end is reaching out to legislators to engage them. We are prioritizing legislators for whom we have folks arriving to Springfield on behalf of, or their representatives, as well as other champions that have championed AFC and HIV related work. With the caveat that, you know, the legislative process is very complex. They may have committee hearings, other votes that they need to pop off for. And so we will do our very best to engage them, for you all to be able to connect with them, but there's always a possibility that they may not be able to meet with us. So there will be opportunities for you to meet with staff, etc. We will do our very best to make that happen. But things happen, you know, this is a very fluid process, meeting with legislators. And so there's no guarantee necessarily that we'll be able to meet with every single legislator that we, you know, that's represented in the attendees. Aces, do you want to add anything to that?
No, yeah, that's all really accurate information. And I think another point is that, you know, when we're providing the platform for you all to engage in the legislative process, get to meet your state representative, you know, we always encourage like folks, especially constituents that come and visit, you know, their inbox is open. You could always just like send them a message saying, you know, I'll be coming to Springfield, would love an opportunity to meet with you. That one-on-one interaction is very, very important, especially for yourselves later on when you're like advocating for other causes. But yeah, our hope is that during the outreach that we try to do, we'll try to like secure as many meetings as possible. And if not, you'll always be able to catch them too, just walking around. If you have, you know, that facial recognition to know what they might look like, you know, feel free to like look at their picture on ilga.gov if you're not already familiar with them.
Thank you, Aces. We're coming up on time, and I want to be conscious of people's time. We can probably take one or two more questions. And if we are not able to answer your question, we'll definitely follow up. So we have a question from Mary. Where can we find the recordings if we can't make a session? I take it you mean the trainings, Mary. We're recording them. I believe we'll be uploading to YouTube potentially. Is that correct, Aces?
Yes.
Awesome. So they will be available through YouTube. We may potentially send them via email once we send resources.
Yes, our hope is that if you're registered for Advocacy Day, we'll be sending this for folks that weren't able to attend. So it'll be like the title of the presentation and a quick link to the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Aces. We have a question from Andy. Will we be assigned any special legislators like the ones in our own district? This kind of goes back to the last question. We're doing our best to connect folks to their legislator, but again, it'll be a fluid process potentially. If they're not able to meet with us, you'll still have potentially a chance to meet with other legislators. or their staff.
Yeah.
And then we have one last question. Do you have top line metrics like numbers of yearly infections, people living with HIV, current versus proposed amounts, etc.? So I can use real numbers. Thanks. Are those in the one pagers? That's a great question. Do we have any
Yeah,
statistics?
so one of the fact sheets specifically related to the HIV funding for the state does have some very surface level information on data. Another helpful resource we'll include in the follow-up is also AIDSview. It's actually where we gathered some of those points for our fact sheet. So we'll be able to include that. You can toggle through and learn a little bit more about what the numbers look like. But again, you're not required to know this off the top of your head, while it is helpful to know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aces. And that concludes our Q&A. And I believe we are at time.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Our emails are on the screen. If you want to take a screenshot, if you want to write it down quickly, you're welcome to reach out to us. And we hope that we will see you next week for our next training, which will be on storytelling. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's after hours and exhausting, but you know, we value you and we look forward to seeing you at Advocacy Day 2023. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.